Good morning. All right, so we're working on our last half a day of the training, and this morning we have the pleasure of having some young people speak about their experiences. And so it's speaking from experiences, insight, and vision from the field. And so I would actually like them to come on up here. And we have two facilitators that are going to be working with the young people this morning. And so I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce both of the facilitators. And I know you're in for a treat this morning. So I would like to introduce Philip Ringwood. He's the Executive Director at Dial Self Youth and Community Services based out of Greenfield, Massachusetts, and they've been an RHY provider for close to 30 years. Phil has worked at Dial Self since 1999 in various positions and became the Executive Director in 2012. He has a background in information technology, and I like that. Because I know you do wonderful work in terms of working with HUD and data and making sure that those systems are talking to each other. And he has a degree in business management. Now, I understand that you have also had lived experience as an unaccompanied minor. And so I know you're very poised and in the perfect position to work with these young people. Our second facilitator is Dr. Fonda Thompson, who is a leader, mentor, professional and motivational speaker. She is a specialist in the field of human resources and a subject matter expert in leadership development and a leading authority in nonprofit management. Over the last 24 years, Fonda has been employed at Open Arms, Inc., a child advocacy center for abused, runaway, and homeless youth. While she's been at Open Arms, she has worked in many capacities as a group home director, runaway and homeless director, human resource director, and she currently serves also as the executive director of Open Arms. So I'm actually going to turn it over, and if we could just give a warm welcome to all of our panelists and facilitators. And then I'm going to turn it over to Phil.
So much. Good morning, everybody. The lights are really bright. You don't realize that sitting down there, how bright the lights coming this way are. So I'm very much looking forward to introducing the rest of our panelists for our closing conversation today. We have an amazing group of young people to share some of their experience, wisdom, and vision with us today. Tuesday morning, some of you may remember, Nola Brantley opened us up by talking about owning our story and getting in touch with our why. And I think our four panelists have a really good hold on both their story and their why. Before I get started and I introduce our panelists and tell a little about their story, I'm going to share a different story with you. So, in the fall of 1996, at 15 years old, I was a runaway. I packed a book bag for school and a duffel bag with clothes and some toiletries. Then I walked the 3.3 miles down a rural highway to a friend's house, and I asked if I could stay with them for a few days until I could figure things out. A few days led to a few weeks, then the next friend, then the next friend, then the next friend, several months. Let's rewind the clock a little bit, though. By the time I was 15, I had already experienced homelessness in the family shelter system once due to domestic violence. I had bounced around from school system to school system as a result of that. I'd lived through supporting one of my parents going through a sex change in a rural county in the early 90s. I experienced my younger sister dying in front of me due to an undiagnosed heart defect. A healthy dose of trauma history, which led to a home life with irreconcilable differences. So, that brings us back to that couch surfing 15-year-old. So I had heard through a couple of friends and the parent of another friend about this agency called Dial Self, a place that young people could go for help figuring stuff out. So I called. I can't remember if it was a payphone at the school or someone's landline. The person I talked with at Dial Self scheduled a time to meet with me and talk about what I was dealing with and what options and resources were available. I sat down with Bob, the outreach case manager. Yep, his name really was Bob. And we talked for a little over an hour. I learned about the limited housing options that were available for me at the time due to my age and the laws in Massachusetts. Some of the takeaways from that first meeting and some follow-up meetings led to referrals for me getting access to food stamps, food pantry support, legal aid to address my runaway status and keeping me from having to enter state custody, and ideas on how to leverage relationships with extended friends and family. I secured permanent housing and eventually graduated from college before I would have graduated from high school. Thanks. At the time, I didn't know any of the program agency abbreviations that were at play behind the scenes, the one exception being DSS, now DCF, and that was an abbreviation I wanted nothing to do with. Looking back now, I can see that an HHS, RHY, SOP funded word-of-mouth outreach, followed by referrals and some short-term case management, made a big impact at just the right time. Less than 2 months after graduating college, I started working at Dial Self. I had a sense of the value that Dial Self had on my life through a brief interaction. And I thought, hey, why not give back? 20 years later, I think I made the right choices. I'm still there, and the agency is doing some amazing work. Today's panelists here today have their own lived experiences and have all found their own way to give back to their communities that have supported them. So, without further delay, I'm going to introduce our panelists. So, in no particular order, or do we want to do an order? Yeah. All right, so we're going to go with Elizabeth Ali. Eliza came to the Cascade Youth and Family Center in 2002 as a 16-year-old homeless youth. Eliza has been homeless with her family off and on throughout her life and was living on the streets for over a year by herself. She had tried to remain in school, but with no stable place to call home, eventually dropped out. Eliza knows all too well the programs offered by RHY, having utilized Basic Center, Transitional Living, and the maternity group home programs. While living in these programs, Eliza graduated from high school, had a healthy baby girl, became independent through extensive life skills training, and eventually started college. Over the past 10 years, she has advocated for the homeless through her work with Grandma's House, Bethlehem Inn, and Cascade Youth and Family Center. Eliza started as a volunteer and is now the program manager of the same maternity group home she lived in as a teen mother. Eliza's ability to emphasize with youth in the program makes her an amazing advocate for homeless youth who are struggling. She brings compassion and commitment to her work with the youth each and every day. Thank you, Eliza, for joining us. We'll do an order as you're seated here. So next is, I'm going to try to get the name right, Zakia Rahman. Hopefully I got the last name right. All right? Excellent. Zaki and her family experienced periods of homelessness due to extreme poverty. She was served by Ozone House, the RHY program in Ann Arbor, Michigan, as a senior in high school, where she and her twin sister, you can stand up if you want for 1 second, and her twin sister were unable to afford school expenses. They reached out to Ozone House, who facilitated connections between the school social worker and other community resources to address the family's financial challenges. Zaki has since graduated and is an advocate for homeless and at-risk youth in her community. She is active in Speak Out, an advocacy and awareness organization made up primarily of youth who have been or are being served by the Ozone House. The group supported by Ozone House speaks out on behalf of homeless youth to inform the community and garner support. Some of you may have seen the Speak Out poster session yesterday.
I know.
We'll see what we can do. Zaki and her sister have worked to inspire, encourage, and teach through song, poetry, and other artistic outlets in theater and communications. They have collaborated with many political and community leaders and are passionate about advancing the narrative of gentrification and housing displacement, homeless and at-risk youth, gun violence, and other humanitarian issues, including challenging stereotyped Muslim narratives. In addition to Speak Out, they have served on youth leadership groups at the University of Michigan, Eastern Michigan University, and the Mayor's Youth Council. Zaki, thank you so much for being here today. Next in line, we have Benjamin Saldana. Ben is a dedicated youth advocate based in Bridgeport, Connecticut. He has emerged as a fearless leader committed to strengthening and uplifting the voices of young leaders in his community and in the nation. Over the course of the last 3 years, Ben has participated in several platforms that have further elevated his journey. These platforms have helped positively influence the lives of young people and raise a higher level of awareness to service providers and policymakers about youth homelessness and youth voice. Ben has worked as a case manager and an outreach specialist for 2 transitional living programs in Bridgeport, Connecticut, called Housing for Success and Housing Plus. In this position, he worked diligently to locate youth in dire need of housing in the Fairfield County area, providing resource connections and supportive services. Currently, he is a life skills instructor for Milestones Behavioral Services, an agency providing supports to adults with autism. For the last 4 years, Ben has also been an active member of the National Youth Advisory Council for National Network for Youth. Thank you so much, Ben, for being here today. And we have Tatiana Rushnova. Tatiana immigrated to the United States from Russia at the age of 4 and entered into foster care at the age of 13. She was emancipated at the age of 17, and in 2005, at 17, she connected with Lighthouse after dropping out of high school and becoming homeless. With the support and services of Lighthouse, Tatiana has gone on to finish high school and currently sits on Lighthouse's Board of Trustees. She is co-founder of a youth advocacy organization called Opportunities Knocking TLP. The organization seeks to give voice to homeless and at-risk youth and promote policy change. Tatiana has met with community and political leaders and played a role in advocating for the passage of House Bill 50, extending foster care support services beyond the age of 18. She has been part of over 40 speaking engagements throughout the state of Ohio for the Ohio for Foster Care Alumni of America, the Coalition on Homelessness and Housing in Ohio, Hamilton County Job and Family Services, Lighthouse Services, and the Dave Thomas Foundation, to name a couple of them. Tatiana is currently a full-time student at Cincinnati Christian University, pursuing a degree in psychology. She also works part-time at the Salvation Army as an emergency assistant advocate. As a representative of the Alumni Board of Ohio, she recently participated in part of a group with Dr. Ben Carson to discuss issues of youth homelessness and those impacting youth aging out of foster care. Her vision is to provide opportunities for all youth to share their voice, to foster their empowerment, and to realize their purpose. Tatiana is also planning to run for city council. Tatiana, thanks so much for being here. So with that, we're going to get started, and the amazing Fonda is going to start off our questions. Thank you.
All right, so good morning. Good morning. It is now time to hear from our young people, and we are truly excited. And so here we go. How did the RHY program make a difference in your life? And if it wasn't an RHY program, share with us the name of the program and the who and what that made a difference in your life.
I will start first. The biggest program that made the most impression for me was Lighthouse Youth Services. That was an agency I joined when I was 17 years old. I was in a girls' group home, and I also attended their school. For me, I was that typical statistic for foster care. I was a high school dropout, didn't even make it to the 10th grade, and I had 18 charges when I was a juvenile. So for me, I did not have any focus or motivation for my future. I was just worried about getting through the next day. Because of Lighthouse and their staff specifically, they are the ones that made the biggest impression, giving me hope that there might be more than just the next day. For me, I think when you're a staff member with an organization, I don't think you realize how much of an impression you have with the youth, especially when it's a job that can take a lot out of you. But for me specifically, it's the staff that made the difference in my life, the daily talks, the conversations. It's more personal and more genuine if you get to know the staff members and you're not just treated as a case number. So for me specifically, it was the staff on top of watching other people in my life that I did not want to become, and role models like Oprah Winfrey.
So for me, I was actually experiencing homelessness with my family, so there was no RHY providing program in my city that could accommodate us collectively. And I think that's a commonality across the nation. There aren't enough family-based programs established. So that ultimately led to my homelessness and my confusion because I didn't understand what homelessness actually was. And I think that's where it starts. When you consider how many young people in your city don't know that they are experiencing homelessness because of that broad definition and that lack of awareness and that lack of education within the community. The community saved my life. The community brought me to a better space, and it brought my family closer together. It's unfortunate to think that you have to go through unfortunate situations to become better sometimes, but I don't regret it. We were able to be connected to other organizations that could offer us things like food and clothing and connections to work, because that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to bring ourselves back up. We didn't really depend on anyone to save our lives or bring us out of the dark, but we wanted some support, and sometimes that support is as easy as some encouraging words. And our community really came together to do that for us. They connected us to places we needed to be connected to. So it was really just that community involvement that made the change and that difference for me, and it brought, that level of awareness and education and inspired me.
All right, my mic sounds nice, check one. Everybody heard me? Okay, awesome. For first, I just want to say good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good night, wherever your mind is at. I just want to welcome you to this space. I know it's been a long 3 days, if it's been 3 days, and the idea of space is really important for me. So to answer this question, what I have to say is, because I'm a person who has strong faith and belief in God, I have to say that God was there for me, my strong and amazing mother was there for me, my brilliant and awesome sister who just reflects everything I am, was there for me. And on top of that, it was organizations like Ozone House that was there for me with spaces like programming and services. And when I say spaces, I don't mean just things like programming and services, but also things like conversations. Those are spaces. And so my question to you is, what are you doing with those spaces? I'll tell you what Ozone House did for me. They allowed me as a 17-year-old senior who had never asked for help in their life to be relieved from stresses that I had to worry about my entire life. As a child, I was responsible for things that older adults needed to handle. And in taking those worries from me, they gave me the space to find myself as a young adult outside of my crisis. Before that, all I knew was responsibility and crisis and taking care of others. And now they had given me the space to think about who I was, how I fit. And now I know exactly what my message is as a person, who I am as a leader, and what my story is. And they gave me the spaces to do that. That's a big reason as to why I'm on this stage talking to y'all right now, okay? I'm good.
I just want to acknowledge what a powerful voice she has, and that she's just her and her sister.
Thank you.
The programs that I the programs that I went through with Cascades and Family Center, he talked a little bit about that when he introduced me. The BCP program, the TLP program, Maternity Group Home program. As I entered those systems, I had no idea what they were. You know, a lot of our kids, they come into the system and into our programs and they say, you know, I didn't even know this was here. You know, we just kind of stumble upon it. You know, in my situation, a school counselor, when I was telling him, you know, I have to leave school, I don't have anywhere to go, I've made it as far as I can, I have nowhere to be, he told me about the program. And it wasn't for probably a year after that that I even had the courage to go. Because, you know, in that place, I was in survival mode. And when you're in survival mode, you're really thinking about, like, where am I going to sleep tonight? How am I going to get food? I didn't know about food stamps. I didn't know, you know, I didn't have those connections to the community. My family did, and we were homeless off and on throughout my life. But it really was just, that was normal to me. That was, you know, the struggle of survival and just going through. And, you know, if I can't go to school today, well, you know, my parents really never told me I needed to go to school anyway. But, you know, that was something for myself, seeing like my dad didn't graduate from high school. It was like a family cycle. And I knew what I wanted for my life. I just didn't know how I was going to get there. And so when I entered those programs and they believed, in my community, my family had a name, okay? we were only there for maybe a year, and the program knew who my brother was. The police knew who my family was. And by the time I came to the TLP, they had already dealt with my mom on the phone through Basic Center. They had already talked to them and seen what that, you know, that whole relationship was like. And so I think I applied a couple times, and when they did let me in, and they were like, well, she's persisting, she wants to be here, because, you know, I think there was a lot of fear about, like, well, this is a troubled kid, and I was a troubled kid, but what made a difference is them just believing in me and really reinforcing, like, once, you know, in the beginning, it's really about, like, food, shelter, things like tampons that people take for granted, you know, having access to showers. And then from there, once I was stable, being able to go to school, you know, they said, you can go get your GED. I wanted to graduate high school. So, but they believed in me. They were like, okay, you know, you went to 1 year so far. You're supposed to be a junior. Okay, if you want to go to high school, go to high school. You know, just that, like, really, that relationship building. You know, this is the first year that I've really heard that word over and over again, being at the RHY trainings, is relationship. And the staff and the other adults, the healthy trust, the adults that I learned to trust, because kids don't come into our programs having trust for adults. That is earned. So if you expect a kid to come in and just be like, okay, you want me to do my chore? Okay. It doesn't work that way. We know that it doesn't work that way, right? You have to earn that from them, because they have been shown by every adult their whole life that you shouldn't trust adults. Even the most, you know, the closest adults to them. So I think a lot of it has to do with the staff, the forgiveness of the staff, and them showing, that allowed trust. Forgiveness brings trust. And for me, I was kicked out of the TLP program 5 times before I graduated. So bringing me back, me calling, I'm from Oregon, me calling from Oakland, California, like, hey, I came here with a friend. I know I was supposed to be back at 8 o'clock, but, you know, it's a month later. I came here with a friend, and now I'm here with my boyfriend, which me now knowing as a professional, you know, in the field, me knowing he was a trafficker, he was an arms dealer, now me knowing he wasn't my boyfriend, you know, but me in a scary situation calling the adults that I trusted, because that's the relationship that they taught me. That's the forgiveness. They forgave me. They brought me in, no questions asked. They actually sent a train ticket, you know, so I could come home, because that's what it was home.
Is this microphone working now? All right, great. Let me bring it up a little bit. So, next I think I'd like to get a little bit more from our panelists about how those programs, the community, the people, kind of really affected the trajectory of your lives. What did that do to impact the direction of your life and kind of your plans for the future? Ben, do you want to start us off on that?
Is this on?
Yeah.
Oh, it is. So, referencing my last point, I think that acts of love and acts of really selflessness were what inspired me. They were what changed me. And there were periods of time when I experienced homelessness with my family that I didn't want to go to school. And my mom was under so much pressure. She said, well, if you don't want to go, then don't go. It's your future. And these were things that my mom wouldn't express otherwise. So it goes to show what kind of things can go on when you're under pressured situations. She was under so much pressure, she was giving me an option. She doesn't do that anymore. So that was what inspired me ultimately to become a provider myself. I thought, I didn't know anything about programs in my community. I didn't know what was available. Nobody was speaking about what was available. So you know what? I'll go find programs to work for. I'll be the person that spreads that awareness, because if the change isn't present, I'm going to be that change. That's what I did. So my very first job was, like I stated in my bio, in Bridgeport, Connecticut. I was able to work for 2 amazing transitional programs that also inspired me. I was a young person, but respected as a professional by the people I was working for and the people I was working with. The young people continued to change my life, and I wasn't experiencing homelessness anymore. I didn't have to share my experiences, but I found myself feeling like it was necessary for me to do that so that they could see that anything is possible. Circumstantial things are circumstantial. They don't define your future. And in a negative way at that, it's defining my future, and it's looking pretty good. So I think that that's a huge component in that. I continue to be inspired by other providers. I continue to be inspired by other youth with lived experiences. I want to keep learning. I want to keep, broadening my horizons. I want to keep educating myself on these things, on policy. I used to struggle significantly with policy-based things, and joining the National Network for Youth also changed my life. I learned things about, I don't know what policy was, and I talk about this every time I can. I was like, what's a policy? Is that about acting? I used to be a performer, and that's how I got into this work. That's a short story. I used to be, or I still do acting. I write and perform plays about situations that young people face on a daily basis, including homelessness, pregnancy prevention, bullying, racism, harassment, things of that nature. And most recently, I started to highlight homelessness and how it's so underrepresented and so unrecognized in our communities. I'm walking by at least a dozen homeless youth a day, and I can't tell them apart anymore. I don't know. So being that I was one of those people inspired me to be out there taking initiatives, continuing to write plays, continuing to advocate with the National Network, because these platforms were provided to me so I could be this change.
Bear with me, y'all. Can y'all hear me? Yeah. All right. Bear with me. Like, I want to answer this question in so many different ways. It's terrible. Me and my twin sister, and you're going to keep hearing me mention my twin sister because I wouldn't be half of anything I am today without her. Love you, girl. But I just have to say, me and my twin sister, we got a problem, okay? Like, we want to do it all. Our interests expand through, and it's like a huge array of anything, because we just feel like we can do it all because I've been given the spaces. Because we can. Exactly, sis. That is a fact. Now listen, y'all, okay? In my 3 years in college, okay, in my head, I have changed my major 11 times. On paper, 3. When I walked in to my college career, my resume, me and my twin sister's resume was longer than our professors, and we know because we checked. Now, that is something that really boosted me to realize how much potential I have as a person. And when I tell y'all I don't know what I want to do in life, I mean seriously, but I know that I just want to do whatever I feel like I need to do. And so that's one thing I can definitely attribute to spaces like Ozone House and different things in my community that have given me the space to do different things and realize how much I love to do it all. Now, me and Sakina are really, that's my sister's name, are really passionate about the arts, performance, poetry, spoken word, singing, and rapping. And I gotta say, y'all, we do it pretty well, okay? Pretty well. We have this piece called Scattered Thoughts that really reflects our story. And it's something that Pam, who's also here, y'all, let's just give it up for Pam. Pam asked me and my sister to sit down and write our story, like an essay. And me and Sakina hate essays, and we were like, no, I don't know how to tell you what I've gone through in my life. And then, you know, we looked at each other and we were like, let's make a poetry piece. And when I tell you not even 10 minutes, we finished this piece, and we've been performing it for a year in front of different crowds, hundreds and thousands of people, in front of prestigious people who most young people might feel intimidated to stand in front of, but who me and my sister will yell in front of to advocate. We've been in spaces with law professors and different politicians and congresswomen and men, and one of our favorite audience members one time was Dr. Yusuf Salam, who, if you all don't know, is one of the exonerated five from the recent Netflix series When They See Us. And now us and him, we're homies. We follow each other on the gram. That's our dude, like, for real. And it's honestly, I don't know, like, what has things like Ozone House done for me? It's shown me that I can literally do anything. No, we are not superheroes, but I swear I want to be one, because guess what? Not everyone likes Spider-Man, even though that's my favorite superhero, and he can't save every emergency, but that doesn't discount him from being a superhero, does it? No, we can't save anything, but we all, we have the power to positively impact everything. And so that's what I want to end it off with right there.
It's so hard to follow her because I feel like she should close us out. You know, everything she says is so right on, and just, God, you are beautiful.
Thank you. I love you.
You know, something I took away from the program, or others that made a difference in the direction of my life, that really, I think sometimes we don't see how people impact us until years down the road. We were talking about this earlier, and it's hard to reflect on myself and where I am today, because I often don't think about those things anymore. I work with young people. I've worked with young people for 10 years, and me being able to see now them social workers, master's level social workers, them paralegals, them with families and married with children, having, completed transition, or having, those big goals that they had for their life, and just seeing them do it, it really just makes me think, like, in my life, it hasn't been one person. That's often a question that people ask, is like, who was the person? It isn't one person. It's one of many people who have, said something or looked at me and acknowledged me, forgave me, saw me, because homeless youth are invisible to a lot of people. Homeless people people avoid looking at them. So it's the people who acknowledged my struggle or just saw me, that I was there, saw that I was worthy of being believed in. It's those seeds, that people plant. And you don't know, it's so hard to it's so easy to get frustrated with kids because you just want them to get it. But sometimes it's 10 years later that they get it. We're all on our own journey, and I think that we cannot bring that expectation to our work. We can't bring an expectation of what we think their lives should look like or what choices they should make for a career. We should emphasize their gifts and their strengths, and help them with their goals. It should be them driving, the conversation. We should be listening. And I think that that's, for me, what made a difference is when people listened. Because often we're not believed. Women, I'm privileged because I'm a white woman, right? There's so many other people in the world that don't have, people believe me sometimes. But, there's been times where, there isn't equity, that's what I'm trying to say. So moving forward, and how we can really encourage and support our youth, and how I've been encouraged and supportive, is when people have listened.
I believe what's impacted me most, I kind of have to agree with Elizabeth. It's not one specific agency or person. It's been just life in general. I can say what my biggest motivation has been is to not be a statistic. I know a lot of people who have died, who've been incarcerated, people who are just living on welfare, people who have no motivation and they're just living. And I knew I wanted more than that. So for me, a lot of my motivation came from not becoming that, and my late night YouTube channel shows that I would watch with Oprah Winfrey, because someone like me, I know it sounds funny and it's hilarious, I love my Oprah Winfrey, but I don't have family. I don't have a mom, I don't have a dad. To this day, I still don't, and I'm 31 years old. For Thanksgiving, I spend Thanksgiving alone because I choose to, even though I get a lot of invitations, it's still awkward. I spend Christmas alone because, again, it's awkward for me. When you're in foster care, going from one place to another for the holidays, you get burnt out being with a different family for every holiday. So I choose to be alone just because that's my one sense of stability during the holidays. One day I'll learn. So for me, I think with me, I would watch Oprah Winfrey. That's where I would get my guidance and my direction for mentorship. But really what's interesting is Lighthouse, I was with them when I emancipated, and then there was a time gap before I got re-involved with them. Now, this is where I can't help but get emotional when it comes to Lighthouse Youth Services, because it might sound cliche, oh, this one specific agency helped me, but really what Lighthouse has done for me, again, I'm 31, in my early 20s, Lighthouse Youth Services decided to start a panel or a committee called the Youth Advisory Council. So it's former foster youth who can come join the council or committee, and they can be a voice and an advocate for their community. So that's how it all started with me, and I was a founding member, one of the founding members. And throughout the years of joining that, there was an opportunity for me to join the Board of Trustees with Lighthouse Youth Services. Now, that's a great honor, being part of the board when you used to be a client on the other side. Because of that, and because of their guidance and direction and giving me the platform, it inspired another youth who was on the board with me to start our nonprofit. So our nonprofit opportunities, Knocking TLP, Tatiana, Laquita, and Partners, we've been up and running for 3 years now because of Lighthouse Youth Services and the direction they gave us and having us have the voice for given us the platform to be a voice. So that's how full circle comes around with me. Well, that's how everything has come full circle when it comes to Lighthouse Youth Services. Also, I think if you have an opportunity with your agency and you could provide that opportunity for other youth, I think it can make the biggest difference, because you're teaching youth how to speak on behalf of their city, behalf of their youth, and I think that would give great opportunity. But otherwise, for me, I think everything has come full circle, and it's because I did not want to be a statistic, and I decided to make my pain work for my future.
All right, you guys are so great. So here is your next question. What do you want those who are working with young people today and the ones who will work with young people after you to know about what is needed? And we'll start with Zakia.
Y'all, here's what I want to tell all of the people that you just mentioned, everyone in this room. Your jobs are not just for yourself. They're for people like myself. And people like myself have stories, trauma-filled stories with unhealthy relationships, broken trust, so many different other struggles. And the last thing we need is to come to the table and speak to a robot with a set agenda for everyone who comes in the room. We need friends on a serious note. Let me look at my notes because I don't want to miss nothing, okay? We need people to be innovative with the solutions that they have. Not every answer is a foster care, a food pantry, or a 6-week program, because we know that not all foster cares are adequate at all. We know, and I know as someone who has used the services of food pantries, that those foods are not always, are expired. They're not always fresh foods. They have that sticker on it that say, this bread is good after 7 days of expiration date. That is not a good feeling to see in your pantry when you come home. And we know that those 6-week programs are not sustainable. They're just so that you can get your data. But guess what? People like me, people with stories like me, are not stuck studies or statistics. We are struggling and stressed out. Let me tell y'all something. Ooh, girl, I need to stand up, okay? Yeah, let me tell you something. You want to know what my sister said the other day? Me and Speak Out were at the Foster Care Review Board doing another performance, and my sister Sakina, this is what she said. She said, this work requires a heart. People need to not see us as files, but families, humans with a heart. And man, I'm about to cry. Oh my God.
Don't cry.
I'm not gonna cry. I'm not gonna cry. But especially for people who have been doing this work a really long time, it can get so easy to fall into that paper book agenda for everyone who walks through the room. But when I tell you that we are all so different, and we all, man, our struggles do not define, I think I heard you say something about something like that. Our struggles do not define who we are as people. If people looked at me and my sister's situation and defined us off of that, man, would you believe the opportunity I would never have been able to have? And I'm so sorry. I am crying because I am an ugly crier. An ugly crier. Thank you. I'm done.
Can we clap for her again? Yeah. You know, you talked about performing, but girl, every time you open your mouth, it's a performance, right? Man, you just touched my soul. Thank you. I forgot the question.
So the question is, what do you want those that will come behind you and those that are working with young people today, what do you need for them to know?
That we're individuals. We're all individual with our own story, and don't work with us and try to look for similarities or try to put us in a box or, try to move I think that that's something that I've really had to learn as a social worker myself is put your phone down, turn your chair around from your computer, look at us, talk to us. Put in a meeting sign on your door, give us time. Because that's what we're often alone. We need that. Children need that when they're growing up. We need that support. We need people to listen to us, like I talked about, to believe us. And that's something that all of you have the ability to do. And we're really blessed and lucky to have the careers and that we have. I think about that every day that I'm at work. We're lucky to have this job. I really believe that most of you probably have some kind of experience or something personal that brought you to the work, because it's not an easy career. It's not one that pays exceptionally well. And so you have to be here because of your heart. And so always lead with your heart and instinct. And if a kid tells you something, believe it, like I said. Because I think that the only time I've ever had people who impacted me in a negative way, social workers that impacted me in a negative way, is when they didn't believe my truth. And that is the most devastating thing we can do for a kid, especially if they're talking about trauma, especially if they're talking about sexual trauma or who they are, who they identify as, what their beliefs are. If somebody tells you, I'm a girl, you call them a girl. If somebody tells you who they are, believe it. And also, I think it's really important, and I've learned this in my career, it's important for us to set up structure for these kids. And yesterday, the man who did the keynote, which he was amazing, just want to say, I've never sat through a keynote for 75 minutes and not realize. The man had 60 slides, but I only know that because somebody told me that. But I didn't count. That would be weird. But he was, who was it? He was amazing. I was writing notes. I have an 11-year-old. Okay, do that. All right, structure, But I think it's really important that we create structure for our kids. They need structure, they need stability. They've never had that, or maybe they haven't had it in a while. And also boundaries. Healthy boundaries teach them to create healthy boundaries. And that's a big one because they don't know who they can trust. They don't know what the healthy boundaries look like, especially, you know, for us females, like seeing that women can be friends, seeing that we can have a trusted male, you know, relationship with an older male we can trust them. Like, that is such a key thing. We teach them what relationships should look like. And so you should lead by example with your staff. You guys should like each other. You should work on liking each other, right? Team building, because everything we do is an example. And that's all I have to say. About that, anyway.
Tatiana?
Well, I have a lot to piggyback off of you with. So I have worked in social services for quite some years too, and with working in emergency assistance at the Salvation Army, there is plenty that I have learned. One thing I think about is, whomever you're working with, imagine if they're your child. Put a face on that child or the youth that you are working with, because with this job, you can easily get burnt out, especially if you've done it for many, many years. Again, it's these people, you get a caseload, a case number, you get a referral, you have to follow up. These are not just people, these are not just numbers, these are people's lives that you have influence over. And I think that is very crucial that you remember that with each and every face that you meet. Because again, this is a job where the lines start getting blurred. With me working in social services, I realized that even though I might have an hour with a specific client, if we needed to go over, so be it. You know, that's their day, that's their time, and I really want to make sure that I'm hearing them, because one thing, Elizabeth, you said that's very crucial, we need to listen to them. It is so easy to sit in front of the computer while you're just typing case notes, you know, but instead, sit in front of them and really hear them, because again, you have influence over these lives. You know, just because you might see them for an hour or so, these people are leaving, these youth are leaving, going into situations that we really don't know what it's like day in and day out. We only hear a portion of the story, but we're not living it. So I think it's crucial that we remember who these youth are, put a face with it if you need be, if need be. Again, imagine if it's your child and you were not there to be able to support them, how would you want your child to be treated in a system? Another thing too is burnout. I think self-care. If you're wanting to really provide quality services, self-care is a must. And I think within the agencies and what you all do, it is crucial that you put yourself first. You can get burnt out. So what do you do for your self-care? Because if you're not taking care of yourself, you're not going to be able to help fill other people's cups. So I think that is a must too. And then on top of that, the worst youth, the worst people. I've had a lot of clients who have come to me, the angrier they are, the more patient I become. And I think we need to remember, behind every behavior, especially the more aggressive behavior, there's needs not being met. So it is crucial that you see in between the lines. If someone's angry and they're spiteful and they're refusing to connect with you, find out the real issue and what's really going on. There is a client that I had one time who was a single mother, 3 kids, and she came at me with, let me tell you, attitude like no tomorrow. But I was persistent, and come to find out after I was persistent and patient with her and I made that rapport with her, she didn't even have tampons to wear for that day and that following week. She didn't even have clothes. She wouldn't even let me know how bad it was until she started crying and really opened up. So I think we must remember, behind the behaviors and behind the friction of whatever they're going to give you, behind all of that, look deeper and really try to understand what's going on, because if you really want to make an impact, it's all about quality services. And to have quality services, you need to make good rapport and to really connect. And that's based off of building trust and respect with whomever you're working with. So.
Hello. Oh, okay. I really want to place a heavy emphasis on how unquestionably powerful the voices of young people actually are. and I highlight unquestionable. Don't ask me any questions about how powerful it is. You did not come here because you want to know if youth voices are powerful. You knew that. You guys came here because you want to learn how to exercise the voices of the young people you are working with. That's why we're here today. I think that something also very important for me to know is that young people who have lived experiences are very prideful most of the time. I struggled for years. I think I just most recently became comfortable actually sharing my story when I joined the National Network, the National Networks Council, and they taught me how to exercise my story in a way that made me comfortable and made me feel empowered, not like I was being tokenized or just being collected, or data was being collected off of the things I was saying. But equally, I think that providers can be very prideful. Am I right? And I say that to say that I've noticed that sometimes programs are not implemented because providers believe they may not work. And us as providers, it's scary to think that you may implement something into your program and it may fall through, but that's okay. As young people with lived experiences, we learn that trial and error is a thing. It happens a lot. It happens in all our experiences. I mean, this girl is a testament to the voice, the youth voice's power. I'm jealous.
Me too.
I can't deal. But also is a testament to what can be done if your programs are structured the right way, if you implement the proper support into your programming, if you take the time to establish connections, to establish friendships and relationships, remaining connected after these people leave your programs, because that makes the difference. When we leave programming, we want to believe that you actually cared because you care about us, not our experiences, not anything else. When we go, we are going to be better, but we are better because of programs that are successful, programs that implemented things by youth. And if you missed this amazing session that my partner Yori Berry and I ran on Tuesday morning, I am deeply sorry. We were able to speak about, how important it is to involve youth in every process, that you can actually incorporate them into. Obviously, there are places that we can't be incorporated into, but that's okay. But clearly communicate why. I think that's another problem in programming where, for example, if there is a vision or a mission statement that you've established behind the scenes, that's the issue. It should be a very clear vision, a very clear focal point that you are aiming to attain, that you can actually share with the young people you're working with, that will assist them in assisting you in creating programs for young people by young people. It's easy. Our jobs are already hard. Why not make it easier by incorporating young people? That's what makes it easy. That's what makes it tangible. Your goals become attainable when you involve the young people in every single process, from planning to coordinating evaluations for your program. And if y'all want to see the presentation, I'll do it for $50 outside the door. But it's very, very important that we set our pride aside. We do that up here. We're doing it right now. We were all nervous, I think, except you.
She wasn't nervous.
We were at the table talking about how nervous we were and how we want to be able to exercise every component of our stories to assist you. We aren't up here because we have to be up here. This is a total voluntary thing. We want to share our stories. We want to provide our expertise, and that's something that's super important to acknowledge. Young people with lived experiences are experts, and that is not in question, ever. So I think that that's something I always highlight, that we are experts, and I am Captain Self-Doubt. I always feel like I want to be the guy who provides the answers everyone wants to hear, or if I provide a certain type of answer, will I be taken seriously as a professional? I think I still struggle to this day with being open, wholeheartedly open. Sometimes it's really difficult for someone with lived experience to be raw or, humbly share my story without feeling like it's going to alter my future in a way that I don't want it to, be altered. So I also want to thank everybody, for supporting me, especially the panelists. We all supported each other, and we agreed to be supportive of each other's visions and each other's statements. And it's great to see that we all align in some fashion. All our stories are so dynamic and different, But we took the time, we all met like today, and we were able to actually speak more today and actually get to know each other, and I think that makes a key difference, and that's just among the people with lived experience. Now, imagine you guys opening up those conversations in your programs. How much can change in a positive manner if you open dialogue within your programs with your young people? So that's all.
Wow, I am just inspired already here. So we have 4 amazing people here that have been sharing some great stuff, and I really want to make sure we give them an opportunity to kind of shine and tell a little bit about, you know, what you kind of are doing with your vision, with your work that you're doing now, and your vision for the youth of tomorrow with us at this point. Eliza, you don't have to follow Zaki for this one. You get to start.
You know, my intro kind of went over this, but I've been working for about 10, 11 years as a social worker. I've worked with homeless adults, veterans, homeless youth, families with children, and then most recently, I just moved into a role as a program manager of the maternity group home that I had my daughter at. I always say that, and it's like, no, I didn't have it. I didn't have my daughter at the program, you know, they took me to the hospital, but you know, she was born and we lived in a shelter for 8 months, and something that's been really, she's 11, almost 12 now, and I was driving her to school the other day, and she said to me, you know, she's very giving, and she grew up, you know, her mom's a social worker, she's volunteered at different programs, that I've worked at, and with her dad's a teacher now, and we were young parents, you know, and so all of her life her dad was a student, and now he's a teacher, and I've always been a social worker, and so she's grown up with like just seeing giving, like us giving to people, and so the other day so she's very aware of the homelessness issue, right? Every time she gets money for Christmas, for her birthday, she always ends up giving it to someone homeless that she sees. And the other day I was driving her to school and she said to me, Mom, because she knows my past, she said, Mom, what is it like to be poor? What is it like to be hungry? And I just thought, like at that moment, you know, there's sometimes moments where you're like, wow, I made it, you know? My goal was to, and that's an emotional subject for me. When I was reading my bio, and one of the staff who was actually at the shelter when I was 16 is here with me today, Kathy, she's right there. Yeah, and you know, so when she asked me that, I just knew like she was born and brought to a shelter, a homeless shelter, but she has not known poverty. And I know that this isn't part of the question, but that's something that was given to me. Like my passion for what I do wasn't given to me by one person. It was given to me through the experience, the 3.5 years that I spent in RHY programs. And just knowing that like every point, you know, now I'm a program manager of a maternity group home. I've worked for almost 11 years with the homeless population, but I'm also a board member on our local COC and represent the youth voice there, which I was thinking about it, and we really need to get someone younger because I can't really say that, you know, I'm really much of a youth anymore, but having been a homeless youth, so what my life was, my trajectory of my life was changed by these programs. And every one of the youth that you serve in some way will be changed by your program. But you have the ability of making that either a good change or a negative change. But in some way, they're going to be changed by the things that you do, the things that you say. And like I said, we're just planting seeds, right? We're just believing in them, we're just listening to them, and it's our job to advocate for them. It's our job to talk to the community about homeless youth. It's our job to talk to our legislators. It's our job to talk to city council, because they don't. It's really interesting how many people say, wait, like homeless children, like that's a thing. They just think either our kids are in foster care if they're homeless, or it's homeless adults. They don't see our kids, because our kids are in school with their kids, right? Our kids are in college. Our kids are, at a friend's house. They don't see, our kids aren't always in a homeless camp. There's multiple different communities of homeless youth. We can't define who homeless youth are. So really we should be looking for all of them, right? And serving all of them. So I just think that that's our job, is to advocate for what, and talk about who homeless youth are, how we can help them. And then put some of the onus back on the state, on the local governments, because they're not helping enough, right? So that's really where I just consider myself an advocate, and I think that we can all do more advocacy.
Tatiana?
I think when it comes to my vision and what I plan to do for the future and what I'm doing now, it's kind of overrated. My name might look great on paper, but let me tell you right now, and I'm going to keep it raw, I've hit a career crisis. I am living out my dreams, but I'm in a place in my life at 31 years old where I really don't even know what I want to do next. Advocating is one of my biggest passions. Speaking on behalf of others and for the voiceless is a passion of mine. But when it comes to my career, I have no idea, because I've even kind of gotten burnt out on social services. So when it comes to what I want to do next or what needs to be done, it's right now I'm trying to find my motivation again. I think, we all have this success story, or we're all up here, as a success story, but it's a never-ending process if you actually think about it. We have our highs and we have our lows, and right now I'm going through a major transition in my life. But when it comes to what I want to do and what I have done, some of the random things that I've done in the past that helps me, like becoming a foster parent one day. One thing I did a few years ago, I took in a 14-year-old girl. I was a mandated reporter, and I ended up taking a 14-year-old girl, and I was her kinship provider, non-relational. And that taught me a major lesson, raising a 14-year-old when I was 28 with no funding available, paying out of pocket in a one-bedroom apartment. So that was an opportunity for me to learn something where I definitely want to be a foster parent down the road. I think with my life and where I'm going now, I have taken all these life experiences, and it's been a lot, and I try to make it work for my future, and it gives me direction on what I want to do and what I don't want to do. So youth. That is something I'm passionate about. Helping youth not relive the situations that I had to. That's something I'm passionate about. We're here to help our youth and runaway and homeless youth, and I was homeless and running away when I was 9 years old, barefooted in the snow. So there's a lot of situations and a lot of trauma that I've gone through that I definitely want to make sure that I don't want others to go through. And I think one thing is being informative, raising awareness about trauma-informed care. The more aware you are of trauma, the more you can help. So I think really it's just finding myself and what I want to do right now and helping give voice for others with what you all want to do. Make your story work for you. And I think when it comes to me and when it comes to you all, why are you all here? I think that is crucial that we remember that. Why are you here? Why are you in the services that you're providing right now? Why are you involved with it? Why are you working in social services right now? You must find the reason why you started so you can keep on going, because it is easy to lose the light like I have right now.